Hello and welcome back to another episode of Lessons in Product Management. I'm your host, John Fontenot, and today's episode is brought to you by our sponsor, Path to Product. Path to Product helps aspiring product managers gain the product management experience that they need to land their first product management role. If you're looking to get into product management, click the link in the show notes and get started at pathtoproduct.io. On today's episode, I got to speak to JJ Rorie, CEO of Great Product Management and author of Immutable, 5 Truths of Great Product Management. And in this episode, we break down the first of the 5 immutable truths, and we leave the rest to you to go buy the book and read the other 4. This is Lessons in Product Management. Let's get started.
Hey, JJ, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, John. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you, excited to talk about your book. But before we do, could you give a brief introduction for the very few in the audience who don't know who you are and what you do?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. So, as you mentioned, author of a new book. It's been out a little over 2 weeks now, called Immutable, 5 Truths of Great Product Managers. Also host a podcast that you've been on, Product Voices. Do teaching at university, Johns Hopkins University, which is really awesome. I've been doing that now a couple of semesters. So teach grad school and undergrad product management classes. So that's awesome. And then work with corporate clients at my advisory firm, Great Product Management. So that's me.
Awesome. A life and career full of product management. Sounds like we're cut from the same cloth there.
Yes, absolutely. I need lots of naps, though.
I hear you. And on the note of the podcast, so for the listeners, go listen to Product Voices, subscribe, follow it. It's really great content. JJ does a really great job there. So make sure you go take a listen.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so, like you said, for the conversation, we wanted to kind of talk through your new book, Immutable. There are 5 immutable truths of great product management. I want to talk about one because the listeners need to go out and buy the book and get the rest of it. But could we just give an overview of like what the 5 truths are?
Yeah, absolutely. So a little background on the book. Obviously, I've been in product management for quite a while. And when I was writing the book, went through a few different iterations, themes, if you will. But it was, I always wanted to find some way to help product managers across the board, across industries, across product types, across experience levels, really hone in on some basic but critical and timeless skills. And so that's kind of where the book came from. So through research, experience, et cetera, kind of honed in on these 5 immutable truths. Of course, it's not the only thing that you need to know and do in product management, but I found that these are kind of the basis of that foundation that really, successful and frankly, happy and healthy product managers pull from when they're trying to navigate this crazy world. So those 5 truths of great product managers are, the first one is great product managers have an exceptionally high level of customer intelligence. They understand their customers well. They don't only know about them, they get into the psyche of those customers. Second one is great product managers are experts at building relationships. We all know that cross-functional relationships are critical in this role. Third, great product managers are master communicators. So they connect with their audiences, they have clear communication styles, and the stories that they tell and the information that they convey is always, or mostly clear and connects with that audience. Fourth, great product managers have uncommonly good judgment. Doesn't mean they always make the right decision, because sometimes there isn't a right and wrong decision or a black and white, very clear right and wrong. But they use good data, they're comfortable with ambiguity, and they have good judgment, better than some of us. And then finally, great product managers are fanatical about prioritizing their time and their efforts. They are very intentional about what they do.
100% agree with all of those. Love them so much. I'll be honest, I haven't finished reading the book yet, but I do have it right in front of me.
Nice.
Took a bunch of notes, highlighted a bunch of stuff, and so excited to kind of break down chapter 1 on why great product managers have exceptionally high customer intelligence here. And so I want to do this for 2 reasons, right? I want like I said, the listeners go out and buy the book because it's really good and they need to read it. But two, I really feel strongly that a lot of times we surface level customer intelligence, or we give lip service to empathy and we need to be customer centric. But I really wanted to break down like your thoughts around what it means to have high customer intelligence, and really dig into that and leave the listeners with something tangible they can walk away with today, and carry out through their weeks and months of product management.
Awesome. Yeah, it's interesting. Customer intelligence. Actually, you'll probably see this as a theme throughout the book. It's not as if I'm the first person to ever say, "Hey, product managers, know your customers," or "Hey, communicate well." It's not that these are, brand new skill sets that we're identifying here. But so we all know that customer intelligence and understanding our customers and what they need is a critical component of successful product management. But even with everyone always knowing that, we still tend to downplay it. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to product managers, and I've done it myself, by the way. I mean, I looking back at myself as a product manager, would have answered this question very similarly. When I ask a product manager, how much time do you spend with customers, or, researching and learning about your customers, it's always a very small percentage. Now, are we going to ever be able to spend 70% of our time with customers? Probably not. We also have to execute right on our role, or, as a part of our role. But when we spend 0 to 5% of our time, which is a very common answer, frankly, and think about it. If you're out there listening, think about how much time you really spend, digging into customers and their needs. And the truth is, we don't spend enough time, even though we all know it's important. And so I try to just kind of strip it back and say, what do you really need to know? What does it mean when we say customer intelligence? And so I look at customer intelligence as not only the knowledge, but also the affinity and kind of the curiosity. Like, you have a passion for understanding. I equate a little bit to emotional intelligence, right? It's like, it's not just knowing something. It's not a data point. It's about having this passion and this curiosity for it, that high level of customer intelligence. And so if you look at customer intelligence, and the way kind of I think about it is, it really starts with basic characteristics. And I kind of lay out 4 levels of customer intelligence in the book. It starts with characteristics. And if it's a business customer, that's, the industry they're in, the size, the revenue, their leadership, are they public or private, all that kind of stuff, kind of firmographics, if you will, or demographics, if you're talking about a consumer, just who they are. And then you move up kind of the customer intelligence level by understanding the second level, which is situations and kind of conditions that they find themselves in, whether it's market conditions or economic conditions or whatever, what's happening around them. Because that's important. Knowing who they are and things about them is important. It's more important to know the situations they're in. But that second level is where a lot of us tend to stop, right? And it's important. We have to know those base layers, but the great product managers and product teams keep going, and they keep going into the third and fourth level, which is, the third level is the motivations and drivers. Like, what's really driving their behaviors and their actions. And if it's a company, what their strategies are, what their goals are, or are they looking, is it shareholder, price driven, or is it more long-term? And those things really matter. Like, what is truly driving their actions? Without getting to that level, it's really, really hard to dig in and ultimately get to that top level of customer intelligence, which is identifying those pain points or those unmet needs, right? Again, none of this is rocket science. We all know it, but it just is critical that we have an intentionality about, okay, what are we going to do about it? Like, let's take a step back and look at our intelligence level. And if we only know about our customers and kind of a little bit about their market conditions, guess what? We're not doing our job as product managers. It's going to be really hard to build products that differentiate themselves from other things they've got, because we're not really finding those needs. So that's the basis, if you will, of customer intelligence. And the thing about customer intelligence, and which is a lot similar to many things in product management, there's no end. It's like you can get to a point where you are the top of it. You're at the crescendo, you've found some pain points, but guess what? Those change and those market conditions and those drivers change. And so there's no real end. It's just a thing that we've got to do constantly. And we've got to be very intentional about keeping that going. And how do you build those levels?
100%. And I love that you went here first, because this is the first place I wanted to go as well. And one thing I noticed is you look at the progression from characteristics to situation and condition on to motivations and drivers and unmet needs, is that as you go up that ladder of customer intelligence, it's almost like the information becomes more and more proprietary. So a lot of times you hear in like product management, like, look at what your competitors are doing, and then you fall into the assumption that assuming your competitors are correct, as we talked about in a previous meeting.
Yes.
But then you brought up the point about differentiation, and I think that's so true, because once you cross that chasm between like the first two, which are service level, most people have access to that information. That's where people copy each other. Then you get into the proprietary stuff that is a lot harder those are insights that are a lot harder to obtain, but it also makes it a whole lot harder to copy those solutions that are based on those things, because as we try to uncover the unknown unknowns about our customer, it's almost impossible for our competitors to look at it and know why we built the solution the way we did, or the fact that we built it in general. So that's one thing I took away from it, is like the level of proprietary and the level of information exclusivity, I guess is the right term, that you get as you go up that ladder increases.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's interesting about, because one of the things I wanted to do in the book is not only just say, hey, have good customer intelligence, but also how can you do that, right? What are some good and frankly easy ways? I mean, if you happen to read the book, it's none of these tools and templates, if you will, are like too complicated. One of my hypotheses and one of my goals in product management is to kind of demystify it and make it a little less complicated than we tend to do. And so I talk about this. It's not even a method. It's basically study, discuss, observe, right? Like if you do those things, those three things consistently, that's, by and large, all you need to do to drive your customer intelligence level up. Now, to study, to your point, which I love, is the studying, which is literally listening to podcasts and reading annual reports and watching Bloomberg and, the literally studying the world around you. That's all that stuff that's out there for everyone. And that's going to give you the base level and maybe up into number two, right? But then you've got to discuss things with industry partners, with your clients, right? You got to take it up to discussing things, gleaning information from not, kind of interpreting what your customers are saying and what the market is saying. And then ultimately observing with your own eyes and really making some predictions about what's going to happen. Right. And so I love the way you couch that. Is it's not about just reading something and getting that base level. It's about, our job in product management is to take all of this information through our studying, through our discussions, and through observing with our own eyes, and then making sense of it. And that's where the greatest product managers and product teams are able to put something out there that customers may not even they need. Competitors never ever thought about, because they didn't discern the same thing that we did through the information.
Totally. And so as I read that towards the end of the chapter about like the study discussed observe, in the observe part, there's an example of a client with a sticky note who uses it to like work around kind of the difficult part of the experience. And I love the example that you shared there. And I think the world and how it's become so virtual, and how there could be this like semi pseudo post-pandemic, I don't know what stage we're at this point in time.
Yeah, it's hard to tell.
We're kind of coming out of it. That's up for debate, whatever. But there could still be some uneasiness of having people in your office who aren't, an employee or a coworker, or being in the office at all. So if you can't get into their environment specifically, I guess, how much do you feel like we lose if we use kind of tools like the Full Stories and Hotjars of the world to do that observational analysis? Or how strongly do you feel that getting next to the person is going to uncover that much more insight?
It's such a great question. And I've been thinking about this myself. I think we're in transition, as you said, and nobody really knows what the let's just say 5 years from now or whatever, is going to look like if we're ever truly post pandemic, or new normal or whatever cliche you want to use. There's no question that in the world we've lived in before and in the world we're somewhat still in, being there is helpful because people and our customers don't think to tell us everything. So the example in the book is, very shortly, it's, this product manager for a recruiting software. And this is a real story from my experience. And one of my clients is recruiting software product manager was visiting one of their customers, a recruiter, in the recruiter's office, and the recruiter worked for a big company. They were an inside or internal recruiter. And they had talked before, on the phone and on Zoom and, getting feedback and product feedback. They had the analytics of usage data and that sort of thing. But there was a sticky note that was a workaround, and it said, go to this slide or this page in this module and blah, blah, blah. And so the product manager said, why didn't you tell me that? Like, I talked to you a lot. Why didn't you tell me that? But it wasn't a big deal to the customer. The customer had to do 3 extra clicks, so they didn't really think of it as a hassle or a product flaw. They just thought, let me just remind myself. Right. And so that's the world we live in. We're human beings. And so we don't want to think about all the things that we could tell the product manager when they call us, or they tell the salesperson or whatever. And we're busy people. And so we're never going to remember to tell them everything. We're going to make our little shortcuts and go on about our business. So I think, the truth is the product analytics tools are amazing and give us more data than we ever had before. So there's no question that's a good thing, but we've got to train ourselves and kind of condition our customers who give us feedback to tell us those things or to bring up those things that they in the pre-pandemic world wouldn't have thought about. Right. I don't know how to do that yet. I mean, I'm still thinking about it and talking to product managers. And it really comes down to the way we frame questions, the way we talk about, certain things. You ask in that example, if the product manager would have said something like, so tell me, have you had to find any workarounds? Have you had to find any, very specific to then pique the mind of the recruiter that says, oh yeah, actually I do this, no big deal. But right. So that way, that product manager would have gotten that data without seeing the sticky note with their own eyes. But we've got to get good at that, because there's no question that we're, going to have fewer in-person meetings with customers. 99% of the industries out there. So we're going to have to find ways to probe into the areas that our customers wouldn't think to tell us anyway. So great question. I don't know how we're going to do it or how long it's going to take for us to get good at it. I think we will. But I do think that in the interim, if you can observe anything with your own eyes in any way or medium, it's always going to be better, because there are always things that customers can't articulate or don't think to articulate to us.
No, I think that's a great point, right? Because like in your scenario, that was a really positive outcome. The customer obviously got enough value to where they were willing to tolerate the workaround and didn't feel like it was a big enough deal. But there could be product managers witnessing a high level of churn, and they might not know why. They could guess and hypothesize all day long, but maybe it takes different stages of the funnel, whether it's like when they first install the product or sign up or get to that aha moment. There's something broken. And I agree that like if you can get and actually observe people through different stages of the funnel, it'll become a lot clearer more quickly where that breakage is.
Yeah. And I think, to go back kind of to the usage and product analytics software, I think we're going to have to start to use that, not even more, but we're also going to have to use it to find things to go ask the customer, right? So we're going to see some breakage points. We're going to see something. We're going to see some trend. Look back at, okay, these customers have churned. Is there anything in the data that shows us a pattern? and then go identify that before they churn, right? And those sorts of things. So I think we will have to start to use data more because, the anecdotes won't be there as much, but we'll have to find patterns in data and then go ask questions that can maybe lead us there.
Absolutely. So JJ, there's so much we could dive into in chapter 1. We didn't even get to customer chains and like all of that goodness. And that's just the first chapter. So unfortunately, like we have to break, but where can people find the book? Where can people find you? Yeah, I mean, I have it right here. I got mine on Amazon, but where else can they find it, and where can they find and connect with you?
Awesome. So you can connect with me at jjrorie.com, jjrorie.com. You'll be able to actually find some links to buy the book there. You'll find all of my social connections and email and all of that. So jjrorie.com, you can connect with me. My company is greatproductmanagement.com. Same thing. All of that information's there. Find the book at Amazon. And Amazon's the only one that has the ebook. So ebook, if that's your thing, it's Amazon, but you can also find hard copy paperback. We are at Barnes & Noble. We're at Bookshop, which is a really cool online bookstore that is a little more expensive. So you'll frankly pay a couple dollars more. But they give part of their proceeds of every sale to local bookstores. So that's kind of cool. But we're also at basically any online bookstore that you could find. So you can Google it if you want, Immutable five Truths of Great Product Managers. You'll find all kinds of things, but it's at all the major ones that you could find. Would love to connect with you. So again, find me at my website and connect on LinkedIn, Twitter, et cetera. John, I think that's how you and I met on Twitter. So if you're on Twitter, please reach out to me. I would love to connect with anyone out there.
Awesome. I'll drop all those links in the show notes. I know how much value everyone listening just got out of like a piece of chapter 1. So don't miss out on the opportunity to go read the full thing. You'll be better for it. And JJ, thanks again for coming on.
Awesome, John. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, make sure you like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube channel. If you're watching if you're listening on the podcast, make sure that you rate and review and subscribe or follow if you haven't already. And thanks for joining me this week, and we'll see you next week for another lesson in product management.